Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Astral Vedic Astrology channel. I'm here with Andrew Foss, who is the president of Bhava, the creator of the astrological software program Shri Jyoti Star. He also has advanced training as a physicist and a master's in physics. Is that correct, Andrew? A master's in physics?
I ended up with a master's, yeah.
A master's in physics, a PhD in computer science. And the reason he's on our channel today is because of his new book, Yoga of the Planets, Their Mantras and Philosophy, which I highly recommend, and you'll see why as we get into this particular discussion. So welcome, Andrew. It's good to have you.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So as we get into this, this discussion, what I would like to do is start out with, can you tell us how this book came about? Because as I was reading it, it's obvious that it took you 20-some years to work through the material in here and to put it together. So how did this come about for you? How did the idea first inception arise?
Right. So I've actually written, instead of a kind of introduction, I have a chapter called The Journey, which is how I really came to start on the book. But I was in India, and somehow this idea came into my head that there were these lists of mantras. They were known to the astrologers, but nobody had ever really gathered them together, done a critical edit of them. And there was no translation or commentary. Mm-hmm. So they were just sort of hidden, really. And it seemed to me, for some reason, and who knows how this thought came into my head, because I was in a very sacred place when it happened.
Right.
Something put it in my head that I should do this. So I just started. And you know, I did a lot of work in the first few months, and then I lost all my notes.
Right.
So I went back to the same place, and I remembered, you know, what I'd written, and then, of course, when you rewrite things, you improve things. So.
But it was a year later or so, wasn't it?
It was a year later. Yes, it was a year later.
And then after that, it took you a couple decades. Is that so?
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, because these mantras really have a lot about consciousness in them, mm-hmm. and you know, my consciousness was always evolving. You know, I had more insights and different things happened, and I met different teachers. And so, you know, the book has reflections from all of those things. And then at a certain point, I felt that I'd finished it, but I didn't have a cover. Oh. And you think that's no big deal. You just get someone to draw a cover. I actually employed several different artists, right. But I still, somehow it wasn't happening. And it was only fairly recently that I met this brilliant artist, Peter Veltevrede, who's a Dutch master artist, who is really the world's #1 as far as these beautiful images of the grahas, the planets, and the mandalas, sacred images from India. So he kindly allowed me to use his pictures. So that solved the problem of the cover. Right. And then I thought that was it. I just, you know, here are the translation commentaries and that's it, you know. But then one day, my Jyotish guru explained to me the secret method of using the mantras and how to find out the mantras for a specific chart.
Right.
Which was like it's just like pennies from heaven, really.
Yes.
And so that was it. Once I got all these pieces together, then the thing came out.
Right.
You know, so it's obviously the time, you know, mm-hmm. Who knows, you can't plan these things.
Well, and one of the reasons I love this book so much is because of obviously the mantras throughout it, but the way you describe the energies behind all the mantras. You know, one of the things I always found with astrology is, in my mind, the most important aspect of it was how the planets themselves represent an aspect of our consciousness. And that no matter what kind of astrology you use, if you know how the planets are meant to function, I think maybe in their more conscious fashion, if an individual can develop that, then maybe their birth chart will work in a more uplifting way. And it seems the use of the mantras, as you described here, helps people to do that, correct?
Yeah, and that's why they've been traditionally used for remedies for, you know, hundreds of years.
Right.
Maybe thousands of years. I mean, the mantras are what make the book. As
right,
you say.
exactly.
I mean, if without that, it's just text. But the mantras have such wonderful, you know, energy in them.
Right.
And if you take the chapter on a particular planet and you go through it, you get so many different angles for what that planet represents. Some of which you really might not be expecting after you've done just sort of Jyotish 101 with some teacher.
Exactly.
Because, we have a certain limited number of keywords for a planet, but that these mantras really expand the vision.
Right.
And you see that every planet has, very profound high energies, along with, the other challenges that it might.
Well, the important part, as soon as I got the book, I immediately opened up to the chapters on Saturn and K2. And I immediately started reading about Saturn and K2. And I told you in an email exchange when we were setting this up that as soon as I read the chapter on Saturn, I just burst into tears.
Wow.
Because of it describes, I mean, even the second the second mantra here where Saturn is described, I can't necessarily pronounce Sanskrit as well as others, but the peaceful and contented one.
Isn't that beautiful?
Exactly. And we don't typically think of Saturn in that way. And even when it goes into your description of how this came about for you, anyway, there's 108 of these, and each one of them just hit me at a little bit different angle. And that's why I wanted to share this with my audience and with other astrologers, because I think it gives them a deeper understanding of the primary power of the planet beyond what you said, which is the 101 keyword description, which is simply Saturn is, suffering.
Yes.
That's not it.
That's not it. No, I know that the early mantras of Saturn are quite a shock because they're so beautiful.
Right.
And they're so uplifting, and you think, what, is this Saturn?
Yeah.
But they really do represent, aspects of the greatness of Saturn. There's no doubt.
Exactly. And they, the other thing I found was that after I read these, I just sat down and I meditated, and the mantra is just so easily stuck in my awareness as I was just breathing and focusing on the mantra. Everything else just kind of went away. And it really brings in just that quality, that energy of the planet. So anyway, I want to thank you for writing this book, because I think it's good for just about everyone. So thank you.
I think on some level that's what I was born to do, And it wasn't, I can't take any credit for it. It just happened.
Well,
and after I finished it, there was this extraordinary sense of peace and relief. Like I came, I did what I had to do. I'm good, And,
you're not done yet. You've got more to do.
Yeah, I know. I
talk about this last chapter here.
Got to make an app for it. But it's like I really feel that people come with there's something you feel you have to do, whether it's even maybe just producing the next generation of your lineage, but there's something, and as long as you haven't done it, there's always this slight feeling of pressure.
Right.
I don't know. This is my theory now, and it's sort of natural. It's like something in your soul feels
right.
And really everybody has got some kind of something that their soul wants to see or wants to do. And so, that's one of the jobs of the astrologers, is to try and help them by pointing out, what they might need to do to really feel that sense of peace.
Right. Exactly. And with this book, there's the process that you described early on when we got started about finding mantras that are applicable to the individual's chart. So from what I understand is that each person has a planet situated in a specific area of the chart, and that there's a way to figure out which mantra from your book relates specifically to that individual's planet. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's very simple, actually.
Okay.
Table in the front of the book. And if you just have the position, the longitude of the planet from some software printout, then you can get in a moment from the table which number of the planet you're looking for. Then you just open up the book and find that number in the chapter on the planet.
Okay.
So it's that simple. I mean, my software, of course, does it for you, and I'm making an app which everyone can download.
Yeah.
It saves the 2 minutes it takes to look it up in the book. But, it is basically very simple. And
will the app also have a description? Will the app have the mantra and a description of the mantra like you do have in your book here?
It's not completely certain exactly. Probably it will, yes.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
only
I mean,
reason
obviously it's going to have layers. Like the first thing is to give the people the number. The next thing would be giving them the mantra, giving them
right.
some explanation like that.
The only reason I ask is because while the mantras themselves are beautiful, what I found is that for individuals who can't necessarily interpret Sanskrit as easily, your descriptions really tie in that underlying energy of the mantra. So that's why I was curious about that.
Yeah, surely.
Um,
I mean, I think it's valuable for people to have the book.
Yes, exactly. And I will put a link at the bottom of the video for people to find this because it's on Amazon, correct?
It's on Amazon, or I have a website, yogaoftheplanets.com.
Okay.
And that site has a number of free videos
Okay.
of lectures I've given, especially on planets like Rahu and Mars, where some of the mantras are a little challenging.
Right.
And so I've shown how I interpret it.
Okay.
They're quite useful, I think, for people. So there's a number of such videos.
Well, I'll put that at the bottom too, yogaoftheplanets.com, so people can access that. And so, when they find these planets, though, when they find the mantras for the planets, just briefly, how do you recommend that they use it? Is the traditional, sit and meditate on it 108 times on the day of the planet? Is there any particular methodology that you would recommend, just generally speaking?
Well, you can go through the whole set of 108. That's one traditional way of doing it. And then, but if you have a specific one that is relevant to your chart, then it depends. Most of the mantras are very uplifting. So you can just use that mantra for meditation.
Right.
If you need help with the pronunciation, then I or someone who knows something about Sanskrit pronunciation can help you. You can use that. Then there are a few mantras where, especially for the extreme malefics, like Saturn, and especially Rahu, where it's a little bit intense. So then I personally, what I recommend the book is, rather than just repeating the mantra, it's good to have a more contemplative view.
Right.
Because behind every intense concept, there is some kind of deeper, higher meaning.
Yes.
So, for example, there's a mantra based on the word Tivra Kopa, which everyone who knows a bit of Sanskrit considers very frightening. It really means very intense, but most people's translation of it is more horrific. Right. All right. But then when in my one of my lectures on the website, I bring this example and I show, for example, in Einstein's chart, it appears. So what it really shows is intense focus. Okay. People who have a very intense focus can get this number. And you see, it's not negative. If you're going to understand the universe, you better have a very intense focus. I mean, there was something unique about Einstein. Right. Any ordinary kind of focus, he will never do it. Right. So that's why we can't get carried away by the sort of superficial instant translation of things. Yes. So that's why I wrote the commentaries. Help, you see, they go into that. And then so if you just meditate on the higher sense of the mantra rather than just simply repeating it, then I think that would be more useful. Right. That's just for those few mantras where there's a more challenging kind of meaning. Right. Well, across the board, I think that's probably a good way to approach it. I mean, even with any kind of spiritual path, coming from a Kriya Yoga path where what we do is circulate life force through the spine, many people do that mechanically. And, exactly. And what you find is when you do that as a method to calm your mind down, to calm your nervous system down, and then you can contemplate higher realities and so on. I think that's true for these mantras as well, that if they can be used in the beginning as maybe a focal point to repeat to get oneself somewhat settled and then move into that space of contemplation, then it would seem to me that you get more of the communion with the power, the actual direct experience of it. So I think that's excellent advice. Excellent advice. That is the truth of meditation. Yeah. The idea of repeating is really just to get you calmed down. Right. Exactly like you said. It's 100%.
And what you mentioned about being intense to figure out the universe, I think that's true for astrology as well, since this is an astrology channel and we're astrologers. Because I think a lot of people want to just crank through the books or memorize the tables rather than actually contemplating, how does this actually apply? How does it actually work? So in the end, I think we all need that kind of energy if we're going to study astrology, if we're going to study meditation, yoga, and so on. So maybe we'll have to find some more of those mantras and prescribe them to people. So to tie all this together today, for those folks who are watching that want to get your book and study the book and learn how to apply it for their own chart, do you have an example of how this might apply, or how someone can find it?
Yeah,
the particular mantra for
I've got a couple of interesting examples.
Okay.
One I just picked up the moment before we connected, which I thought was rather interesting. Let's see if I can share this with you. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Right. So this is Abraham Lincoln's chart.
Okay.
And I just picked his name because it was the top of the list of famous people in the database.
Okay.
So then this was just 5 minutes ago. So then I looked at the chart and thought, well, he's famous for the Civil War, all the things surrounding that. And
right.
Obviously the fact that he had to do that is related to this Rahu Mars in the 9th house. So then I thought, well, let's just look up his Mars. So I looked up number 56. See, the software's just telling us the number. Right
there by the planet, the 59, 56.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we could look up Rahu, but I thought Mars is the commander-in-chief of the gods.
Right.
So there's always an intense thing between Mars and Rahu, because Rahu is the commander-in-chief of the other side.
Yes.
And when the two commanders-in-chief meet, there's always a big battle. But anyway, so the number 56 for Mars happens to be Om Samara Durjayaya Nama, which literally means unconquerable, difficult to overcome in a conflict.
Right.
So, and I said that this includes meetings of all kinds, including negotiations. Mars represents those who will fight back and fight hard.
Right.
This can be as true of the warrior as it is of the saint, in different ways with different manifestations.
So
I thought that was just quite classic, really.
Well, and especially since it seems to fall in his 9th house, is that correct? 7, 8, 9.
Exactly.
So a house of Dharma. So would you say that if Abraham Lincoln was your client and he was amidst the Civil War, when it came to a mantra, this would be a mantra that you would recommend for him to help support his Dharma to get through this?
You could, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think what I found is that I often do this if I'm looking at someone's chart and there's some just question about the planet. For example, here, there is a understanding in Jyotish that Rahu blocks Mars.
Okay.
It's called Kuja Sambhana.
Yes.
And so you might look at that and think, well, Mars is fighting the righteous war in the 9th house, but is he going to lose because Rahu overpowers him?
Right.
Then I would have looked up the number of Mars and seen, no, he's going to win.
Because of the quality of that particular mantra, is that correct?
Yeah, because the mantra is saying he's going to win.
Okay, that brings up one quick question. So then these mantras, this is an obvious question, but just to confirm, they're in a particular order then for a reason, in that when you learn these mantras, when you studied them from the sources that you got, it was very specific about where they go, correct?
That's right. The sequence is extremely critical.
Okay.
And I try, because there are different lists, and the lists are mostly the same, but not 100%.
Okay.
So, I worked the best I could to figure out wherever there was a discrepancy, which list was more likely to be giving the correct.
Right.
And so far, everything has turned out to be remarkably
right.
perfect. This is just one of multiple examples. Like the insights the planets give is by their position in the numbering sequence is quite remarkable. I've never seen it fail.
So for astrologers, not necessarily just people who are wanting to apply it to their own chart, but astrologers, the kind of technique that you gave was that when you're looking at, say, this Mars and this Rahu, you saw that the Mars mantra indicated being unconquerable. And I actually looked up Rahu's here, and it looks like it says Om Goraya Namaha for awful. And so I'm assuming that that means that this Mars allows him to overcome this awful Rahu energy within his life. Is that accurate?
I think we could, yeah, you could also say that the war will be awful.
Right.
So this is not any small war. This is something very...
Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, because this also gives a very, I think, probably powerful technique to astrologers as well to help bring the points home.
I think so. I think it's fantastic because you get insights. I mean, I've had feedback from colleagues, and they say that they've got insights into people's charts from the mantras which they would never have got from the chart.
Right. Right.
So it's really quite useful. And let's face it, that's the traditional astrologers in India have had these lists and have been using them.
Right. Yeah.
They never gave any lectures in America about it.
Right. Well, that was your job. And
I think it's nice to see so many colleagues picking it up now, so I'm sure.
And I looked up Jupiter as well here, and indicating an auspicious omen or sign. So I think that's also very telling, of his role within our country, indicating an auspicious omen or sign for new cycles.
Because of that Jupiter that he's so respected.
Exactly. Well, this is excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add about maybe this chart in particular, or any other aspects to this whole process that you've outlined in this book here?
Well, I've got one other example that's particularly interesting.
Okay. Vivekananda.
Okay. This is Swami Vivekananda. Now, I was giving a lecture recently in California, and I put this up as one of the examples. So if you look up the sun, number 81.
Okay.
Because I was giving a lecture on the sun and the soul, so I was focused on the sun.
The Lord of the Immortals.
Yes, Om Amare Shaya Namah.
Yes.
So, it's easy to give some logic about why Swami Vivekananda was connected to the Lord of the Immortals. Mm-hmm. Or somehow he was said to be the incarnation of the leading Rishi, Saptarishi. Right. So many things. But then it was pointed out to me from the audience by a great astrologer that the Amaresha, another way of saying the same thing is Amarnath. Amarnath has the same meaning in Sanskrit as Amaresha. Mm-hmm. And Swami Vivekananda had some very special connection to Amarnath. Amarnath is a particular Shiva in Kashmir.
Okay.
It's a cave where the water is dripping and creating a linga. And once a year there's a big festival there. People go. It's a long walk, but thousands of people go there. And when Swami Vivekananda had basically decided to leave, he went there. In fact, it was all, I think, predicted by his guru long before. He went there, had darshan, and then he gave up the body. Mm. So there was something very, very significant. And if you see this chart, it's all about the sun. The sun is the Atma Karaka in the Lagna, in Sagittarius, totally dominating.
Right.
And he went to Amarnath and he left. That was I thought it was quite stunning.
Well, I mean, that in and of itself is fantastic. I even just happened to flip to Jupiter, and where it describes born in the year of the Angiras, and it says
right.
that describes one as rich, wise, experienced, and always compassionate, and that these are the qualities expected in a guru or a guide, which of course he most certainly was.
Exactly. Yes, Angiras was one of the very great rishis.
Yes. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today to speak with me about this. I think that this is really a great blessing for not only people who just want to improve their life through understanding astrology, But I think the way you described how to actualize these mantras for the astrologer to get some deeper understanding of the chart, I think that's also really fascinating. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this and writing this book. This is really an excellent book, Andrew.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your kind words and for interviewing me.
And there is the final chapter on the secrets of the Vimshottari Dasha, which we talked about talking about, but as I described, there's a lot there to digest. And you mentioned that it took you how many years to come up with the description of this? Did you say 20-some?
Well, no, the whole book I worked on, but the question of why the Vimshottari Dasha periods are the length they are is something I've been thinking about ever since I came across Jyotish. That's more than 30 years.
Okay.
And it would just seem to be a complete brick wall.
Right.
And then one day it just all came to me. So I just wrote it down.
Excellent. I'm still contemplating it, and I want to make sure that I can at least have somewhat of a semi-intelligent conversation with you about it before we discuss it.
Sure.
So thank you.
Very nice.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you, Andrew.
God bless. Namaste.
Peace.